Hello, welcome to the Weekly Review, a program of South Network making sense of relevant topics and news. I'm Boja Alfred Yaron Modi. I'm the producer and host of the program. Our topic for discussion today is communal conflicts and local peace and reconciliation efforts. We will be looking into issues like what are the factors causing and exacerbating communal conflicts in South Sudan, how communal conflicts lead to insecurity that has an effect at the national level, how grassroots peace and reconciliation initiatives could be developed and promoted for lasting peace in the country, and lessons on ending communal conflicts that South Sudan can learn from other countries, and more. We have two guests joining us in the program today. They are William Ongoro and Kawaja. Ongoro is a former national coordinator with the defunct National Platform for Peace and Reconciliation, which was established in 2014 in the aftermath of the December 15th, 2013 crisis, as a hub for institutions with a peace mandate, faith-based organizations and civil society organizations striving with a common agenda of amplifying voices of South Sudanese for peace and reconciliation. The NPPR, the National Platform for Peace and Reconciliation, had worked with and supported more than 70 civil society organizations and across the country. So Ongoro also served as a conflict resolution expert with the Withika Peace and Development Initiative, a non-profit organization founded by artist and social activist Forrest Withika, with the mission to help societies impacted by, among others, destructive conflicts transform into safer and more prosperous communities. As a recognition of his contribution to peace, healing, and reconciliation among ethnic and political divide spectrum, Ongoro was awarded International Livia Peace Award in 2016 in Copenhagen, Denmark. On the other side, we have Kawaja, who is a political scientist. He's the executive director of Center for Democracy and Integrity. He's also involved in many peace efforts, including at the grassroots level. Welcome to the Weekly Review, the two of you, Ongoro and Kaw.
Thank you very much, Rogers. Thank you.
Well, communal conflicts could be defined as a violent conflict between non-state groups that are organized along a shared communal identity. This means groups are organized along a shared communal identity that are not formally organized rebel groups or militias, and the confrontation takes place along the lines of group identities. Though some equate the concept of communal identity with ethnic or religious identity, some scholars purposefully left the definition a bit more open, arguing that group identity can be considered as socially constructed rather than a static phenomenon, and that affirming that communal identity refers to ethnic or religious identity would make the term less flexible and unable to capture other forms of possible communal identity. Now, given our situation, we've seen even this week, I already reported that according to SEPO, South Sudanese were killed. 2,509 South Sudanese were killed between March and April. And that was, according to SEPO, a result of communal violence and ambushes. So tell us, what is the nature of the communal conflict we have in South Sudan, in your views? We start with Ongoro, and then we hear also from Kaw.
Thank you very much. I think you hinted a very important point. The intercommunal violence or conflict in South Sudan has existed for so quite long. It's not a new phenomenon. Even before our independence, the intercommunal violence or conflict has been in existence. So in South Sudan, contemporarily or currently, you find conflict between communities or within communities, and what we refer as intercommunal violence or intercommunal conflicts or intra. So the question of identity is a sort of a broader understanding. It's from the perspective of a nation. And therefore, when we talk of identity, we're talking of how can we create a common identity in South Sudan. Creating a common identity in South Sudan is attached to the respect and dignified way of social cohesion between communities, bearing in mind our diversity. Of course, we are a multicultural society in South Sudan, and therefore creating an identity is one of the challenges which exacerbate violence, because there is a saying which Syndica has said, we and they. So this common positioning of ethnicity is built on the identity itself, and therefore you find people saying we and they. So from a broader perspective, identity is a bigger issue in South Sudan. But as you are referring to us to discuss about some common factors exacerbating the local conflicts, yes, there are a lot of factors. One is about resources, right? Resources. You find their grazing lands and their arid lands. There are people who don't have maybe other resources in which they find it an opportunity to probably position themselves and to build their livelihoods and to create an environment where they can exist. And therefore, if people don't have resources in a particular point of view in an area, you find a resource can be a factor of conflict. Just give an example. If you think of the what you call the cattle keeping communities, right? These cattle keeping communities, sometimes you find they migrate to green pasture lands, and finding this issue of how can we build a sort of a relationship between the farmers and the cattle keeping communities. Just to give you an example, last year by October and November, a large and huge cattle community migrated from the northern part of the country. Let me say particularly from Jongole, and they were moving to the lower part of Kajukeji, part of Nimule. So they of course, it's their right by the citizen right. They are migrating in order to provide the grazing land for their cattle. But finding the host community who are farmers becomes very difficult, and they clash because of the cattle are consuming or the cattle are being grazed in the farming land. So sometimes these are one of the factors that cause this kind of intercommunal or intra-conflict. You're mute, Roger. You're mute. I don't get you.
Yes, now. Sorry, yeah. Well, that is part of it. Let's hear from Cow before we go into details. Cow, your observations. Yes. The nature of conflicts. We have communal conflicts and the factors causing and or exacerbating them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger, for hosting us this morning on this important topic. First, as William said, the communal violence is as old as human. But the current communal conflict has actually gone beyond the territory nature of the cattle raiding, but rather touches on the broader issues of accountability, reconciliation, political inclusion, state effectiveness, development, and proliferation of arms in the hand of the civilian. You know, if you look at the current causes of the communal violence in South Sudan, let's be very particular. There's an element of the breakdown of rule of law. If you look at among the pastoralist communities, take example, Lakes, Warab, and Unity. If you look at the communal conflict between the Bull of Unity State and the Twitch of Warab State, it is all about cattle raiding. It is about poverty, where a youth can organize themselves, they heavily arm themselves to go and raid so that they have what they can. In my view, it is indeed said that the new trend of the communal conflict in the country is so worrying, is so life-losing. And as my colleague William said before, the question of identity, who we are, where do we belong, how are we related, is an issue also. But it is not the immediate bigger factor that is actually exacerbating the conflict, the communal conflict. But let me highlight two key things. One is the question of state effectiveness. This question of state effectiveness takes us back to, is the government in control of the civil population? Who is more powerful between the civil population that are actually holding arms illegally and the government of the day? Can the government enforce law and order on this, the civil population that are holding arms? The big answer of this is no. The government is unable to actually exercise the concealed mandate because the youth civil population are in possession of arms illegally. The issue of poverty. If you look at the question of poverty, if you do what? It is one of the factors that compromises and dialogue among the communities. To reconcile them today, you can cut out the dialogue today, but tomorrow, if their stomach are empty, they will organize themselves so they can go and loot for survival. So I just want to highlight these two things, but otherwise, we need not to take the question of communal conflict over all ages to the current communal conflict of the present day South Sudan. It has taken another trend, is a new community conflict altogether, and it needs a new methodologies, not the old one, to address the problem that we are facing now. Thank you.
I had a discussion earlier, sometimes back, with a political leader, an elder. She was arguing that there is improvement looking back into the nature of communal conflicts in the 80s and 70s, whereby chiefs and community leaders would openly, publicly support young people to go and loot and go and attack other communities. But now it is not done that openly. People fear. People don't do that. Her argument is that there's kind of changes like compared to before. What would you say to that? Because
yeah, thank you. Before I answer your question, I would like to highlight some few things. You're talking of the factors that that leads to communal violence. I think we have already identified resource and poverty, but there is also an aspects of revenge killing. That's one has to bear in mind. It's also about land, the geopolitical boundaries. Of course, when we look at the bigger picture of it, and it's also about other, let's say, the cultural norms that excite or that promotes manhood, in order that if you're not a fierce fighter and all these kind of things, you might not be identified as a hero. Yes, as my brother Kawaja has put it, the trends of communal violence in South Sudan have already changed. In the past, the context was different, but today the context is also another dimension. So here, the traditional chiefs or the traditional authority had really power to influence and to see into that communities or within communities or across community exist peacefully, or they can even exacerbate or influence the process of conflict in a country. So if the elder has this assertion, is asserting that the communal violence in the past is different from today, correct. yes, the question of law and order, which means about the question of governance. Who is having the legal authority in order to void this kind of intercommunal violence? It means there must be a structure. There must be a governance structure. There must be a traditional structure, which has to really work in hand to ensure that there is what we call the conflict resolutions at the grassroots levels. Yes, today, as my brother Kawaja put it, the possession of small arms is really uncontrollable. Everyone seems to be, every household in the rural areas or in our communities have arms. So therefore, the only means for survival, the only means for better livelihoods, the only means to protect the territory, the only means to protect the economic driving force is only to find oneself defending his or her community in that manner.
Legally,
therefore,
legally, the constitution, the transitional constitution, in Article 59F, as amended, mandates, the Council of States. One of the competencies of the Council of States is to legislate for the promotion of culture of peace, reconciliation, and communal harmony among all the people of the states. So you find that is there, but I have never come across any legislation from the Council of States that existed throughout the years. Now, the agreement, the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan, the revitalized agreement, also talks about a constitution of the legislature and including the Council of States. Now, in your opinion, how best could grassroots and local peace and reconciliation initiatives be developed and promoted for lasting peace in South Sudan, in terms of also pushing the Council of States to do what is right?
Yes, absolutely. This is structures are there according to the revitalized peace agreement. We were talking of 2014. There was a kind of ethnic divide or communal divides. So consolidating peace does not mean we have to consolidate peace at the national level. People for long and for times, again and again, they have forgotten that if we have not consolidated the local initiatives to build peace, we cannot realize the broader peace that we're talking about in the revitalized peace agreement. And therefore, I feel if that provision is provided, the Council of the States must ensure and must empower the local traditional leaders who will be driving the initiatives for reconciling and for building peace within the grassroots. We have the traditional methods that are in place, but these traditional methods, if they are not supported in reconciling and ensuring there is a peace building at the grassroots level, then it means they become defunct. They cannot work. So therefore, if the State Council of Ministers are thinking about this kind of initiative, there is a way to empower the traditional leaders. And if they are empowered, like of course I learned 2 months ago that the governor of Eastern Equatorial State, Louis Lobong Lejore, managed to bring all the traditional leaders from all the kingdoms and all from other communities, and through the local government initiatives, the function becomes part of the community itself. So these initiatives are there, but they need to be supported.
Yes, Kawaja, would you like to add on that, the issue of Council of States?
Yeah. Of course. Let me go into this. The problem of this issue in this country, the issue of communal conflict, is not the vacuum of legal instruments. But is a question as to how the government can make sure that they are smoothly exercising their constitutional mandate. If we are to the level you are talking of, the level of traditional leadership authorities, it is very far, by the way, in my thinking. One, you need to start with a comprehensive disarmament. When you disarm the entire country, you provide them protection, so they feel protected. When you protect them, then you need to carry out the issue of accountability and justice. After that, you reconcile them. When you reconcile them now, then you hand them now to the traditional chiefs and local authorities, because by then they will be listening to the laws of the country. But now, if they cannot listen to the government, how will they listen to vulnerable Salatin chiefs that are in the villages? They can even kill chiefs. They can even they are even in a position to attack the whole governor. Moving with the arm. So, if we want to address it, practically speaking, let's encourage our government to carry out disarmament. After disarmament, let the same government come up with the methodology of protecting the civil population across over the country. When you protect them, then you carry out now the accountability and justice. After you have done that, then they would have now understood that now you actually process of violation of authority. Look at it. But the question of legal instrument, whether the Council of the State can enact this law or that, I think that's not what is lacking. We have the beautiful laws. We have the best one. But there's a total breakdown of law and order. So it is the government now to reinforce itself on the people that so that there is felt there's government.
Now,
and you have to listen to.
On the issue of the disarmament, you've seen disarmament have been tried times and again over the years. What have been the problems in your views? Why did they fail?
I think disarmament from the first date of carrying out disarmament in this country has never been comprehensive. It has been selective. That's one problem. And the fact that it was selective made communities that were disarmed to rearm themselves because the government is not protecting them from those that the government is not disarmed. That's one question. There are leakages. You know, if you look at even the weapons that are actually collected from the civil population, the storage capability of the government or the design committee is in question. You know, how does these arms get their way to the hands of the civil population in order to be addressed from the side of the government? It has been a problem. Yes, I agree with you that if we need to talk of disarmament, will it not be like the disarmament that we did previously? It is in place. But let's keep the government to trust that we need to know where the arms that have been collected from the civil population are stored. Where are they? Where are they stored? We can even opt it to actually enact, where I agree with you with the law, that the collected arms should be destroyed immediately. You know, we can agree, the government can work out such a formula of destroying the immediate arm collected if it become now a business of sub-cartel that are dealing with the disarmament committee. So those are things that I believe.
Let's hear Ongoro. What examples do we have of successful local peace efforts or reconciliation efforts that can be taken up?
Well, I cannot specifically outline or maybe identify, but we have a common example. They call it one of the initiatives. They call it dialogue within communities, which has been successful. I think dialogue is the most appropriate thing to put in conflict resolution. Also, mediation is part of that. And I remember one of the initiatives that we created in South Sudan was know your neighbor or know your community. If we're able to know ourselves as people, as communities, then it's able to respect and understand the diversity across the spectrum or other people. So in South Sudan, there are so many initiatives that had been initiated, peace conferences, peace dialogues. But I think what I see, these things are not bearing fruits. I don't know what is the problem. Maybe we need to redesign the approach in dialoguing across communities or within communities. Or maybe we need to design a new approach to initiate what kind of mediation. Is it going to be a facilitative mediation, or is it going to be a court-led mediation? So here we need to understand that, yes, there were so many initiatives from the community level, from the state level, even from the national government. Now we are talking of the national dialogue. And now you can see, where is the national dialogue heading? What are the outcomes of the national dialogue? So we spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of resources trying to bring peace and trying to bring stability and trying to reconcile communities. Probably this is what Kawaja say. We have institutions, but we don't have personalities that are for lead this kind of initiatives. Probably maybe we are identifying wrong initiatives. Well, so therefore, from my own perspective, we will try to see why all these initiatives, the peace dialogues, the conferences are failing.
We're going for a short break. Then I will let Kawaja add something on possible local peace initiatives that have been successful. With that, our dear viewer, let's go for a short break and then we come back. Welcome back to the program. This is the weekly review, making sense of relevant topics and news. We are discussing today communal conflicts and local peace and reconciliation efforts in South Sudan. Kawaja, we were to hear from you examples of local peace initiatives that have worked or maybe could be developed further. You were involved in some, so you tell us if there are any, and then in case there are not, we can also hear from you on other jurisdiction that we can bring from other countries. What lessons we can bring on?
Thank you very much, Roger. You know, when you carry out any reconciliation or mediation among the communities, it's a very tedious work. It's a very difficult job from the inception up to the end. But let me bring you the two best examples of the communal conflict, I mean the reconciliation that has been done. One of them is the Wunlit. You know, the Wunlit Peace Initiative could be one of the best models. Could be one of the best models that we can visit in our attempt to reconcile the communities that are actually at war. Number two, we have another local peace initiative which I got involved. That was between the Rup community and Kwe community of Rumbek Center of Lake State. You know that local peace initiative has full water, and up to now, they are peacefully living among themselves. You need to know what are the issues that bring them at war. After identifying the issues that bring them at war, you ask them as to how you can actually address the root causes of their problems. You go by what they said, so that they hold the process. They felt, the way it needs to be done is what you are doing. After you have reached the documentation or the comprehensive documentation of all the root causes and the solution of the root causes, and you go to the implementation, you must tackle the critical part of the reconciliation, which is the justice, the accountability. You need to make sure the culprits are actually apprehended, and you carry out the justice based on the recommendation of the community you want to reconcile.
How about the impact of incitements? Because some people would like to exploit the vulnerability of people at the community levels who may not be well enlightened to choose for themselves, even to talk about their root causes that they may think that are the problem. So you find intellectuals even sometimes, or even people with political interests, having hands in exacerbating communal conflicts. What do you say about that implication and how to respond to that?
That's true. You know, some of the intercommunal conflict involve an element of politics, and in you identifying the root causes, if you identify one of the things that actually fueling the conflict between or among community A and B or C as an element of politics, then you need also to involve the political actors from the inception stage, so that they are also part of the ongoing reconciliation. And if your identification excludes the political element of it, then I think they will not interfere with it. But otherwise, if you want to carry out any reconciliation in a given constituency, You cannot do this minus the political leadership of that country. You know, you need to involve them. So that also they own the process. They also help you in trying to provide solution to the problem, because they might also be aware of the solutions. You know, for the sector of local politics in the process of reconciliation is an issue. But
Well, let's hear from Ustaz Ongoro.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Rogers. I think peace building is just very complex, which requires a lot of mechanisms. And when we're talking of reconciling, or let's say in conflict resolution, it's about understanding, as Kawaja says, it's about understanding the context. And if you understand the context, you have to come to the issues. And if you understand the issues, you need to know the positions of the parties into the conflict. And if you know their positions, you need to come down to their needs. Yes, I understand that the political influence might be there, but most often for us, we don't consider the political influence, because if the political actors are part of the conflict, then they become parties to that process. But if they are external actors, then we know how we can deal with them. And therefore, the best way is to do facilitative mediation or facilitative dialogue. It is for us as conflict resolution practitioners, we only provide a space and we provide the voice, we guide, and it is the parties who know their problems that will come up with a number of resolutions based on their needs, based on their positions, based on their issues that they are entangled in. And therefore, like for instance, last year we had a dialogue between Chagari and Chigudu in Ikotos. It was about resources, and I think they identified that they are interdependent on each other as communities. Therefore, there is a need to have a kind of a reconciliation, a kind of a dialogue that can help them peacefully coexist in the area.
Well, now. Let me ask you something about the National Platform for Peace and Reconciliation that you were the national coordinator of.
You're welcome.
The Revitalized Agreement provides that the revitalized transitional government of national unity shall establish the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation and Healing as critical part of peace building process in South Sudan, to spearhead efforts to address the legacy of conflicts, promote peace, national reconciliation and healing. Now, the National Platform for Peace and Reconciliation was engaged in also almost similar process before. And the requirements now in the Revitalized Agreement is that the National Platform for Peace and Reconciliation shall transfer their files, records and documentation to the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation and Healing following its establishment. Of course, we have not reached that stage of the establishment of that commission, but do you have any idea of that process submission, or is the NPPR prepared now some things that they're going to surrender to that body?
I think this is a very excellent question. With the provision of chapter 4 in the Revitalized Peace Agreement, in which it has to look into traditional justice and the question of truth, healing, and reconciliation, there is a provision which states the establishment of the Truth, Healing, and Reconciliation Commission. Until today, as I said, the commission has not been established. Yes, before 2016, we were asked to provide all our files. Unfortunately, NPPR at the moment is defunct. It's no more existing. But if personally or as a committee we were asked to provide those files, we have the files in the archives. But since then, no one even bothered to ask what has been those initiatives that we have created in order to ensure there was a kind of information or data in form of analysis that is needed to help to spearhead the formation or the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We are available if the revitalized agreement, and the parties to the agreement are in position to ask for our technical support in terms of, you remember in chapter 4 there's the issue of compensation, reparation, healing, and reconciliation, and even documenting some of these grievances or these atrocities or these crimes that have been committed within the period of the conflict. I think we had been at that point. Thank you.
Well, we're heading towards the end of the program. Now, here's my final question, and it's also connected to what I asked earlier about lessons South Sudan could learn from other countries in addressing this issue of communal conflicts. The Revitalize Agreement, the chapter dealing with the making of the permanent constitution, because we're still being governed under the transitional constitution. One of the parameters of the constitution, the permanent constitution making, and the principles there is that South Sudanese going to be committed, in that constitution, to peaceful resolution of national issues through dialogue, tolerance, accommodation, and respect of others' opinion. That's one of the parameters stipulated in the agreement.
Yes.
Kawaja Kau and you, both of you, you give us your views on how to handle that permanent constitution making process in a way that it respects, it provides avenues for conflict resolution at the communal levels, and also taking lessons from other countries that probably you may be able to give. Kawaja, can you start? Then okay. You can conclude. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Roger. First, it is unfortunate that my phone actually will. I'll not be with you because it's running out of power. That's one. But before it runs out of power, let me give you my thinking about what the question you asked. The constitution making process is a people's-driven process. It is not an elite-driven process. This means that if we want to make the permanent constitution as a country, we must start from the grassroots by collecting their views as to how should they be governed. What type of system do they want? How do they want it to elect their leaders? How do they want it, the social contract, to look between them and their own leaders? These are the things that you need to start with.
Yes, correct. I think a constitution is a citizen, is a public and a citizen document that has to center into the feelings and emotions and opinions of citizens of a country, and therefore it is because it is what really defines what a country is, a constitution by itself, and therefore if there is this process that has been initiated. I learned that 2 weeks ago there was a sort of a inter training or inter-service training for committees that will be reviewing the constitution. For us to have a permanent constitution, it must be a people-driven initiative. People must participate. All the constituencies, women, men, youth, political leaders or political parties, all must really agree, because this is what defines a country itself, and this is what defines the political spectrum. What are people going to live by, and the social contract that we are ascended to. From the examples that you are talking about, yes, just from the perspective of saying people must really be involved. Yes, in Africa, it is really a rare issue that the constitutional making process involves all. But we believe that if the issue of peace, stability of peace, has to be put, it has to be embedded in the constitution, it's very important, because this intercommunal violence cannot exist if we don't have the law. The law must be a paramount law that guides everybody, so that we have a peaceful and stable communities across South Sudan.
Well, do you see conformity between the peace process at communal levels, or even the dialogues, with obligations to the laws of the country, and even regional and international obligations when it comes to the issue?
Yes, I think as I said earlier, there is really a need to consolidate local initiatives. The peace agreement is a public policy, it's a document, but if it is not interpreted well and it is not implemented at the grassroots, and even the local ownership is missing, and therefore we will continue to have this vacuum and communities. So therefore I see that we know that the peace agreement has to be interpreted and has to be implemented and has to be owned by local communities. And therefore, if the constitution is part of the document itself, because the constitution will also will spell out exactly how can we respect our diversity, how can we peacefully coexist, what are our obligations to the government, what are our obligations to the state government or to the national government, what are our obligations to community, to our communities as leaders. And therefore, whether youth or women, they will all be guided, and they will all be in that ship of ensuring that local peace has to be consolidated.
Well, thank you very much for expressing your views on the program. Both of you, Kawaja, who is absent at the moment, and you, William Ongoro, the weekly review. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Roger.
And with that, our dear viewer, we have come to the end of the program. You can follow us on South Sudan Network Facebook page and South Sudan Network YouTube channel, so that you keep in touch with our programs.